Hey, good morning. Hi. Today we're going to focus mostly on the textural calligraphy. Actually, this is quite a new subject for me to teach because, very honestly, I've been teaching point to pen for, over a decade, and I've never shown publicly, like usually a private class that I do like broad edge. So, I'm gonna introduce this because I thought that it's really important to have some basic understanding or at least to be able to write broad edge when you do manuscript style of artwork because it really complements each other. Now, before that, I have a slideshow to show you. So I'm going to share my screen because I'd like to introduce you the history and a little bit um, more information about what we're learning before we start. So okay, so this is just a brief introduction to this calligraphy style called textura quadrata. You can just like simplify it called textura. It's basically completely okay to call it like that. Um, oop, let me So this is the historical background. As I mentioned, you can call it textura or textualis. I think this is how we pronounce it. It basically, this name has a Latin root to mean texture, to mean like weaving. So you can see that it's really like very dense style, right? Very textural style, and that's why the name comes from. There's also a category of scripts called black letter, you probably heard of, or you can call it Gothic script. But textura is more specific to this specific style. Okay, and the time frame, it was very popular during the Middle Ages time, and it spans from the early 13th century to the late 15th century. Now, what I found interesting is when I discovered this, part of history is it was primarily used in Northern Europe. So basically France or Germany or Belgium or Netherlands, which we call today, and in the old times they called the Low Countries. Now, except the area where like Southern Europe. So in Italy and Spain, the scribes actually reject using this quadrata form because they thought it was like, quite I guess, very harsh, very angular. So they want to use a wider and rounder Gothic style called rotunda. Now, it was mainly used for religious texts. So, for example, Bibles, psalters. Psalters are basically songbooks that, people in the church that sing along with the hymns. And then they're used for Book of Hours. So, a lot of of Hours that we've seen has textura written in it. And also at that time, they were used for university instructional textbook. And I read that it was usually, the subject of law or philosophy. They use textura as well. A lot of them were used in luxury manuscript and very important legal document as well. Now, the overall style, you can see that on an image on the left, it's just really black, right? So very dense. So it's first of all, that's why it's a black letter. And the spacing in between the letters is very narrow. Usually is one pen width. We'll explain a little bit more when I demonstrate. And it's very compact and looks very uniform. In fact, actually, it's quite hard to read because it's so similar. And it's extremely vertical, right? Very rigid and very geometric. So lots of terms to describe the style of it. Now, the white spaces for both inside and between the letters are almost identical. Scribes were able to work faster, to compress more words onto a limited space on a parchment. Now, that was a very good way because, parchment or vellum were scarce, right? Expensive. So if you can pack more letters on a page, that means you can fit more words, on each page. Then it just kind of also save money in a way. Now, the forms are very angular, and you can see that it doesn't have much curves in it. I mean, when it slowly move on to the centuries, the style have changed, have more curves. But at the beginning, it was very straight, very angular. And you can see the example of letter O on the right-hand side here. You can see that it's often written in a hexagon, not a circle shape. Now, the picket fence style. So picket fence, it's like, the fence that we see with a lot of like uh, the pickets, I guess. Like it's very architectural look, and the spacing between the vertical strokes, right? It's actually 1 to 1 ratio. Again, as I said, I will demonstrate the pen width, the meaning of this. But the spacing are really close to each other. Okay, so there's not like a big wide space in the middle. Now it really create a very dense and very textural woven style on the page. Now, later on, we also introduce what lozenge and quadrant are. Okay, so these are the important elements that will really make up your letters for textura. Now, for the calligraphy techniques, for tools, in the medieval times, they use quills, using feather quills that could come from goose for any kind of birds. They cut the quill so that they can write textura. But modern days now, we have the broad edge steel nibs. You can also use, if you like, pilot parallel pens. I also mentioned on the supply list of the Zig calligraphy, which is a felt tip pen, which is very user friendly for complete beginners because they're a lot easier to control. Now, for the pen angle, it's constantly held at, average is a 45-degree angle to the baseline. And the for all the principles, vertical and diagonal strokes. And for the X height, so the X height refers to the letter height here. It's typically 4 to 5 pen width, okay, nib width. So again, if you're not familiar with these calligraphy terms, not to worry, we'll come to it when we do the demonstration. Now, for the ink flow, if you want to create a very dense, very opaque result, like black, then I definitely recommend some black inks, which we'll cover later, what kind of black ink are more suitable. And there are differences, obviously, with black ink as well. And if you use opaque black ink, it really helps you to achieve the characteristic of the very heavy, very like woven style of black letter. Now, all the downstrokes, the meanings is the vertical downstrokes are perfectly straight. It really helps to maintain uniform thickness across all letters. Now, for the legacy of Textura quadrata, I found it so interesting when I knew about this part of history is um, so when we talk about Johannes Gutenberg, right, who created this letterpress machine, the Gutenberg printing press, he used the typeface of a textura. So he did not actually invent a new typeface, right? He used and copied Textura quadrata, from his German local scribes, and he cast his first metal movable type for the printing press with this style. And actually, for this script, why is it so important? Because it actually created all these dots, right? Um, I think it's pronounced diacritic dot, which is like like the dot on the I and the J. Because if you look at textura, when you write, for example, a word like minimum, it can be very confusing because it's just a lot of like down vertical strokes. So they use the dots to identify the letter I so that it really helps to differentiate the I from other letters. And another evolution is like for when Textura quadrata start to fade in Europe by 1500, it slowly evolved in Germany into Fractal. So another style that is like very decorative with flourishes on a black letter form. And Fractals serve as the official German typeface for many, many centuries. Okay. And now for modern use today, it remains a very favorite style for all calligraphers and tattoo artists, and also brand designers. So you can actually still see a lot of, this black letter or textura, used nowadays. Oh, by the way, that is, if you didn't see this clearly, this is an arm. So it's a tattoo that was done in this textura style. Now, I just want to give you a little bit more because for me, learning textura is pretty much a self-learning process. I mean, I will be taking a lot more classes myself to, really improve my knowledge. But when I am trying to study this and try to, like compare resources, actually, I was so surprised that there is a lot of like little variations amount the style. And the way I interpret this is, because it's come from many, many centuries, so it's kind of like the way I think about calligraphy, because even when you think about learning copperplate, you will find so many different exemplar that are not exactly the same, but they have a similar form, right? So the way I see it is it's like, if you ask a Chinese person or a Malaysian or a Singaporean or Japanese people to cook a pineapple fried rice, right? And then they all have similar ingredients, but they might add their own taste, their own flavor to it. So it all kind of come out taste differently, in a way. So that's how I interpret it because you can see that from one example. This is found as part of a column of the 42 line Bible. So it was done no later than 1456, right? So you can see that this textura style, it's very like quite chunky, very bold. Now, the one on here is from the Book of Hours. So it's from 1945, around this period, okay? And it was from Rome. Now, when we zoom in to see the details, now, if you look at the left one, you can see that actually, um, first of all, the line's a little bit shaky, right? It's not like it's perfectly clean. I guess it was probably the reason is the tool maybe wasn't sharpened, the feather quill. I don't really know why, but or it could be like maybe the person who wrote this has a little bit shaky hand. It really I don't understand. But when I look into the detail, let's say the letter I and N, you can see that is this quadrant, like a diamond square here, right? Now, the if I interpret this way of writing, you can see the diamond and then a straight vertical and then another diamond. So it kind of like a three strokes, right? But if we compare it to here, as time move on, because this piece was done much earlier. Now, this one is in the 14th century. You can see that, the N here, you still see the quadrant, right? The square diamond and a vertical and then a diamond, but it kind of move like it's faster. The movement is more fluid and this becomes more like a one stroke in a way. So it's very interesting to actually study. And if you ever have like doubt about, like exemplar, I always go back to the historical ones to refer to so that it really help you to, analyze the letters better. So that's kind of my interpretation. So in the class, when we start writing, I will show you, to do both ways where you put a square diamond here, a vertical and a square diamond. And another way is kind of like how you can combine it into one stroke. So sorry, that was quite technical, but I thought I would show you on the screen because it's easier with a computer. Now, for last page, I want to demonstrate is some book recommendation. These are the books I actually really, really enjoy when I study textura or broad edge calligraphy. So this book you can still buy, these two books you can still buy on Amazon. I think the first one is the Medieval Calligraphy by Mark Drogen. Okay, it's really good because it focuses on all the medieval calligraphy. So if you want to explore other types of medieval style instead of just textura, it will give you a lot of examples. Really interesting. Now, this book, The Art of and Craft of Hand Lettering by Annie Cecile. So this woman lady, she is, I believe, I mean, she is still in the US, and I met her once in person, which is an amazing experience because I first have no idea who she was. I was sitting at the international conference. I think this is 2, 3 years ago. And what happened? I was chatting to her, and we were just talking about farm animals, completely not calligraphy related, and because we're all having lunch together. And what is so beautiful is like later on, Huang, he's from Vietnam, very famous calligrapher, Huang, and he said to me, Carla, do you know who she was? And I said, I don't know. I really don't know, And then he said, oh, she's so famous. She's Annie, and she published books about calligraphy, and she's been writing for a long time. But anyway, really lovely person, and her book is truly wonderful of lots of techniques. So I highly recommended it to you. Now, the last book, this might be a bit harder to find because I don't think it's still in print, but I think you can still get it, from secondhand. I bought a version when I was in a secondhand shop when I was in America. And basically, Edward Johnston, this book, Formal Penmanship, covers a lot of the techniques. So if you're interested in like pen width, understanding all the techniques, this is a really good book to learn from. Okay, so that's what I want to cover. I am going to stop sharing the screen. Now I'm going to move on to using my document camera. If you find on the updated handout, it is on page 37. You have this whole page of the exemplar. Now you notice that I only focus on the minuscules, the lower cases, first, because when we do manuscript, you can use the capitals from doing the decoration for it. But when you do calligraphy, the minuscules is more important because it's basically made up of mainly lower cases on the writing page. Now, if you look at this exemplar, you can see that what I added on the newer version, it's the pen angle. So the pen angle is between 40 to 45. I use a 45 pen angle myself, but as long as every time you're using the same degree, that will be okay. Now, this the first part is in sequence, and you notice the bottom here is basically dividing them into family groups. And I want to talk about the groups here. So this is a straight line letters group. So basically notice all the similarity is they are vertical, straight lines, okay? And then the second group, we call closed letters. So these are all closed with a letter O hidden inside. So you can see the letter O here. Basically, you will see a similar shape all fitting in these letters. Now you have the open top or open bottom letters. Now open top means, for example, this letter U. This space here is open, okay? And then this is bottom open, N is bottom open, H is bottom, W is top open, V is top open, and here for Y is top open. Okay, so we categorize it as open top or open bottom letters group. Now, the last two groups, this is open side letters. So CER, they are open on the right-hand side. Okay. And then for the special letters, and it's letter S and Z or Z. So they are a little bit different from other letters, but there are still similarity. For example, the pen width of one pen width, but again, they are a little bit hard to fit into any other group, so it's called the special letters on its own. Now, before we begin writing each letter, we also want to learn about warm-up stroke. Now, I'm going to use the printed copy sheets. Now, if you haven't printed this, and so not to worry, what you can do is you can grab a piece of blank paper, and I want to show you. Now, again, because this is an online class, everyone might be using different tools at the moment. So for demonstration, I'm just going to use a different color of the Zig pen, which is the felt tip pen. I will also demonstrate using broad edge nib. This is a Mitchell nib that I'm gonna use. Now you can also be using, if you have the parallel pen from Pilot, you can use that as well. Now, personally, for me, I do love using it, but I'm really kind of like every time I feel like I'm making a mess and I get all the fountain pen ink on my hand. So I actually prefer just using a Zig for demonstration, for most of my demonstration. Okay, now whatever tools you're using, if you have not printed the guide, what you can do is you can use your pen width, okay, just to do the guideline. And I want to demonstrate how you can do that. Now, the other thing you need to have is a long ruler, okay, and a mechanical pencil. So first of all, you want to place your nib like vertically like this on the side and pull a square. We are creating this. I'm trying to focus first. Okay, so we want two for the ascenders, and then I'm gonna use five, okay, five of them. So number 3, 4, and 5. like that, and pull one and two. Okay, I should do a better job in making it more like a square, but as long as the edges are touching, okay. Now this way to find out this is better than doing this. Okay, because sometimes you might see, on exemplar, people might use this kind of stairs, stacking, right? But then because the problem is when you do this, it can go more a bit off. By doing this, it's more accurate. Now, anyway, once you have this, so you want to have two squares and you put a straight line and also you put one on the top. Okay, and then you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you put another guideline here. And I like using this ruler, which is the Westcott brand, this brand Westcott. Oh, upside down. Okay, because I really like it's translucent, it's very light, and it's with grids, so you can really check whether your paper, you can check always by making it aligned with the verticals here. Okay. Now, once you have this two pen width, and this is five, and this is two, this is the X height area. Now, this is where the ascender goes. So, for example, L, H, all the letters with ascender will go above, and all the letters with descender will go below. So, I'll call this the baseline, and this is the waistline, and this is the ascender, and this is the descender. So please ignore these diamonds. So I would use this method over this one. Okay. Now, once you have this, then you can actually just, do the calligraphy with me. And if you're using a smaller pen, like let's say you're using a nib, right? So you do exactly the same. You pull out the diamond, sorry, the square, exactly pulling it out and draw the guideline. Now I'm gonna just use this one to demonstrate. So when we practice the textura, it's important to even practice this because a lot of times we don't use a guideline, right? So if you make these, uneven or inconsistent, it really affect a little bit of the guidelines that you're gonna draw later on. So the way I do it is I hold the pen, okay, or your pen nib, you make it vertical. Now, first of all, when I sit, I also think about how I sit. I need to first make sure I'm not slouching, I'm not putting too much pressure on the table. Also, I want to make sure my paper is actually vertical. So unlike copper plate or, if you write Spencerian or any pointed script which has a slant, which is, like at a 52 or 55-degree slant line like this, you will slant the paper. If you're right-handed, you will rotate the paper clockwise, right? So for this one, I will keep it as vertical as possible because later I'm gonna pull out some straight lines, so I want to make sure that it's not angled. Now for these, you can just warm up a few of them. If you're using your own tool, you can. Now, every time when you start learning something, try not to rush. We want to be as mindful as possible. So when we place this, even as a felt tip, I will think about the corner touching the corner, and I will pull that square. So, and when I pull this, right, I sometimes will count in my head. So I would say 1, 2, 3, and I stop. So that if I do the counting in my, inside, I'll get a consistent shape. Okay. So I would always like 1, 2, 3 inside. I don't say it out, but I would do that to help me to find that rhythm. So that's the first exercise. I won't be repeating this, because it's a recording. You can watch it again. Now, the verticals. So you want to place your pen nib at a 45 degrees angle. So the easiest way is you basically just, let's say I draw a straight line and you just need to find, divide it. You can divide it with, your, just by judging it. And you can always have this reference. If you're unsure, you can put it here and then place it onto your page, right? But 45 is rather easy, because you can estimate it. Because sometimes when I do a 30-degree, I always have to go back to my this reference to help me, to put that angle, right? Because if it's a 30, let's say something here, then I will place my nib on this guide and then I move to where I'm gonna write, especially when I first, when I first learned to do broad edge. Now, if it's a 45, you just place it at a 45. Now, make sure that your arm, I'm gonna zoom out, the arm here, right? Basically, the forearm should be gently resting on the table, no pressure pushing on. And I want to be able to pull down with my whole arm movement. And I'm not using my finger to pull this. So I want to be relaxed and I move the paper to an area where I can feel like I'm comfortable to come down. Now, if you're using a felt tip uh, or using a, a pointed, not a pointed, sorry, a broad edge nib. So when you do this, you want to really like hold it and then move slowly downwards, okay? And especially with the broad nib, the metal broad nib, for beginner, for me at least, I found it very frustrating because the ink flow is really difficult. And it was hard for me to learn the form because I was struggling so much with the ink flow and everything. So when I first start learning, I used the felt tip to help me. So this brush pen, and because it really helped me to understand all the letter forms. When you feel more comfortable with the letter form, you can move on to using, the broad edge nib. You can also definitely try the pilot pen as well. Now, when you do this vertical, I also think about accuracy. So I want to make sure that this point here, right? So when I place my tip down, I want to touch the waistline. And then when I come down, I want to end where the baseline is. I do one more strokes. And I mentioned you want to be relaxed because you're able to come down more smoothly. If you put too much pressure and sometimes it's like it's stuck on the page and it's hard to pull a straight line. You place it and then this time we slide along horizontally. So you relax and just do a couple of them. Like that. Okay. So when you do this again, I will notice that whether my corner is, nice and clean and sharp and try to be as horizontal as possible. Now, if you struggle to do straight or horizontal line, which is not quite easy when you're first starting, the other thing you can do is you can use your ruler and line like straight guidelines, right? You can edit kind of like every now and then, like this, so that you always have something to reference. So if I'm pulling a line here, my eyes will be looking at this pencil line and it will help me to stay vertical. Okay, so similarly, or if you want, you can just place it next to the guideline, and just pull this line down. And then the idea is, this is following the pencil line. Um, so similarly, for the horizontal lines, you can also draw, a couple of them, and then you can place it here and just try to touch the top line to the pencil line. Okay, so you do that, especially if you don't have anything to trace on. Now I want to introduce this. This is the quadrant. So we talk a little bit more later on, but this is like a square diamond. So basically, when you pull down like that at a 45-degree angle, now you want to make sure that this aligns to this corner, the top and the bottom aligns, and the horizontal. I'll use this. This is a better. So it should also align. Basically, the four sides are the same. Okay, four sides are the same length. So you can practice this little diamond, square diamond shape. Again, you can count one, two. Use your own rhythm. One, two. And it worked for me, by counting. And also, what I would also do is when I pull this down, my eyes will be looking at this point, okay? And I will pull until this point feel like it's connecting to this point. So when I first start, let's say the first stroke, I will have this, right? And I already create this corner. And I pull this as I'm coming down, my eyes, instead of just looking at my nib, I will look at this corner so that I want to make sure it's all aligned. And then you count in your head, one, two. Now what happens is if you pull a bit longer, so that will becomes a rectangular shape. So at this moment, you notice the four sides are not the same length anymore. This is a bit longer. Now in Textura, this is another, let me grab the right pen here. There is a term for this. This is a lozenge, okay? So this is a rectangular shape. We'll come to it when we do the lower cases. Now, the other thing is we can practice this because you notice that we use this letter form all the time in the um, close letter group, right? Because we talked about the close letter group is basically a lot of them has the letter O base. So you want to do a straight vertical. Now I will stop before the baseline and I will then move to the right hand side and I lift because when the corner touches the baseline, I'll lift my pen. Now coming back to here and I will pull the line and lift and come down vertical like that. So if I write the ductus, this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we do a couple of them. Okay, one without the guide. Notice I'm not rushing. I'm really trying to, be mindful with my strokes. Now, the last warm up I want to show you is a bit of curve because as centuries move on, time move on, there's a lot more like, I think it's probably becoming more efficient and write faster and kind of like when you add speed, you have a bit of a flow. And in Textura, you can actually use a bit of curvature as well. When I do the lowercase, you will see that the variation. Now for this one, you place it on a 45-degree, you curve up kind of like an S curve. So the movement is very subtle, it's coming up, okay? You go up a little bit and straight down and curve up a little bit. So the motion, it's not dramatic, but and you go up So this is still remaining quite a straight line here. Okay. So you have a slight curve motion. Now this is just a warm up, kind of get used to the tools. Now I want to give you more information about uh, this script. So I'm going to grab a new piece of paper. I'm going to use this as my guide now. Now, this is not going straight into the lowercase yet. This is more about the concept, right? So I will write everything down here. Now, first of all, when you practice, I mean, I should draw a better square, but let's do a 45-degree angle. Okay, so that's the pen angle. Now, when you do the letter O, let me demonstrate again. Now, when we do this, we want to come down vertical. Now, before you touch the baseline, you want to do the diagonal, and then you do the diagonal again, and then you come down vertical. I want to do a couple of them. I'm looking at the corner. Now, what I want to aim is to aim for having one pen width. This is what we call the pen width. So it's the width of your pen. Now, if you're using the broad edge nib, if you're doing a broad edge here, then you use the same pen width here. Now I'll do one more and I will explain the reason why. Come down, make an angle, and then a vertical. Oops, it doesn't touch, sorry. This happens sometimes, so let's angle it out a little bit. Like that. So ignore this one. Now, what I want to demonstrate here is you have in this letter, right, letter O, you have outside here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You can see there's 6 outer sides. Now for the inside, you see there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the 4 inner sides. So when we talk about the counter space, the counter space is the white space, we don't just look inside the letter, but you also observe the outside. Okay, that's important. When you dissect it, you want to make sure the left and the right are symmetrical. Okay. Now, another thing when you do with this broad edge pen, you want to make sure that this corner, right, and the next corner are just touching but not overlapping. So I do one, okay, like that. And another example that is done, let's say I'm overlapping. So this is what you want to avoid. Okay. Now, do you see that this is a nice and clean connection? This is good. Okay, so when it's good, I put a tick. Now you want them to just touching each other. The corner of this stroke and the left corner are just touching. Now here, it's not that great because it's overlapped. So this is very important that when we do Not just letter O, but for all letters, they should not be, you should have a clean connection here. Now, if I use a different color and you can see it better, I'm going to change the color and you can see that clean connection. Okay, so this is what we're looking for. So these are important. Now, another thing that is important is we want to make sure that when you draw parallel, verticals, they are, parallel to each other, basically. So you want all your verticals to be parallel to each other. So I'll do a couple of them. Now notice that they are all parallel verticals or vertical strokes. So this is good. What we don't want to do is, for example, if we do our I or N, but end up the verticals, some are slightly angled, maybe. Some are straight, but then some are like angled the other way. You see, this is what I mean by they are not being parallel. Okay, so we don't want that. And you should have, kind of a equal spacing in between. Now, what is also important is you want to make sure the space inside the letter, right here, the space inside the letter equals to the width of the stroke. So equals to, basically it means the pen width, right? So let's do an example. I'm gonna write a letter N. Now, when we look at this letter N, you will notice that this space is equal to the pen width, okay, the width of the stroke. So what we don't want, now I'm covering these because this will apply to all other letters as well. So, or majority of the letters. So if you do the M, it will be the same concept. So the space inside this letter. Now, what I don't want is, for example, like that. You see, this is way more than one pen width, right? It's a little bit longer. So we don't want that. Okay. Now, one more important things about is the space between the letters. So not inside this time, but the space between the letters. Okay, now the space between the letters should be equal to the space inside the letter. So again, it is, the one pen width. Now I'm gonna write a little bit longer here to demonstrate this idea. Let's say I'm writing the word Maya, M-I-A. I'm gonna focus on writing this to show you. And we'll come to writing all this later as well. So M-I. So the dot of the I will be here. Now, what I want to explain is we already learned that the interior space of the letter should be one pen width equal, right? Now, the letter and letter in between that space should also be one pen width. Okay, do you see that? Right? Now, this is what we want to achieve. And what we don't want to achieve is, for example, again, I'm writing MIA first. Now, let's say I put the I quite far away. And the A very close. Now, these are very dramatic examples. Actually, it's not close enough, but I want to, just demonstrate that within this word, you can see that this is way more than one pen width. Okay, this is okay, but you want to keep it all consistent, okay? So the spaces between the letters should be equal to the space inside the letter. Now remember the historical part is you can compress them, right? So that's why we can't leave such a white space. But first of all, it's not legible, it's obviously doesn't look like they belong to one word. So that's why we want to keep that spacing consistent with one pen width. Now, I also want to introduce you the quadrant. The quadrant, like I said, you can think about counting, right? One, two. So I will put it at 45-degree and then I will count one and two. Kind of like make sure that um, I'll put it here as well. One and two. So I want to make sure this quadrant, oops, I think the angle is slightly off. Okay, so I'll give it a name, quadrant. So that's how the name comes from, right? Textura quadrata, so the quadrant. Now, the quadrant, you can describe it as a square diamond. And also, we mentioned that we want to make sure all four sides are equal. Okay. And the tip that I want to suggest, this is the way you can count one and two. So when you come down, whatever tools you're using, one, two, you want to check and make sure that this is all aligned so that it's a square shape. Now, the lozenge is longer. So we will do one, two, three. You see, it's longer than the quadrant. One, two, three. One, two, three. It's very meditative. Now, when we draw this, you want to make sure this is longer, like a rectangular shape. And when we put the dotted line, you notice that this corner and this corner, they don't align, right? But the horizontal should align, okay? And the way I describe a lozenge, you can definitely say it's a rectangular. You can say rectangular diamond because it's still a diamond. Because a diamond not necessarily has to be a square. So this, when you read some textbook, they will still call this like an elongated diamond. The word elongated really describe that it's not four sides the same. Okay. And then when count it, I'll count one, two, and three. Okay. Now, once we have this concept, you can actually apply it, in combination with the verticals to create the letters. Now, another thing that I want to show you here is how I do with the quadrant. So I want to demonstrate when I place the quadrant, let's say I do a letter I have um, the quadrant, and then I'll do a vertical, and I'll place my nib right here in the center, come down, lift, and then I'll place the nib again here in the center and pull it down. Now with the pencil line, you can see it a little bit better. So I have the square. So about the midpoint, that's where I place the nib again. You go a vertical. Okay, you have about here. Okay, so do you see the placement of it? So if you're using the nib, you do this. And once you have the first quadrant, you want to place it kind of in the middle and pull it down, lift, and find the midpoint of the vertical and pull it down again. So this is a quadrant, and the bottom here is a quadrant. Now, we try a quadrant connected to a lozenge. So a quadrant, square diamond, vertical, and then now this time you pull it a bit longer. You can count one, two, three, right? Now, if I draw this out, again, you have the diamond on the top, the vertical, then you have the vertical. I hope to try to draw this nicely because it's a bit tricky. So I have this longer. So I think I make it too low. Let's see. So you have this longer shape here, like that. Okay. So the relationship is you put the quadrant, find the midpoint of this line here, and then you pull the vertical, then you do the lozenge longer. So count about one, two, three. So that's a quadrant and that's a lozenge. Now, once you have this idea, it really is like how you mix and match. So let's grab a new page. One last demo before we jump into. So I have, for example, let's say I'm gonna do just a bunch of quadrant connection, okay? Quadrant with the quadrant, just touching each other, come down. You can practice this as a drill. Oops. Now I have to focus very hard, to be honest, because I want to make sure they are quite vertical. Now, notice that when you do this, right, always write, this is the quadrant. They're all quadrant at the moment. So you can see that the inside space here are quite narrow. You see this yellow area, they're quite narrow. I would say they're less than one pen width, right? Do you see if I place the pen, it's narrower than one pen width. Now, to open it up, to give it more space, let's say we will do a quadrant. We'll keep the leg with the quadrant. Now I want to open it up. So I use a lozenge. So you have one, two, three longer. Then you come down. You see immediately this is open up, right? Now this is slightly wider than I wanted it to be. So I will do one that is a little bit narrower. I want to make it exactly one pen width. So I think this is better, okay? So the concept is when you want to open up a space, of course, you use a rectangular to open it up. And the bottom, we keep it as the quadrant. So this is already a letter M, right? Now we can do the W. So for W, let's use a different color. Oops, sorry, a little bit too wide. Let's start again. So this is a lozenge. Then I do the quadrant, the square diamond on top. So you can see that by opening the base, now you have a W, right? So we are going to just change the bottom to a lozenge and a lozenge. This one was a little bit not great because it's not connected and it was a little bit too wide. So I should have placed this and this vertical closer. So if this happens, you can just redo it and then also think about the placement. That's why when we drew, especially about spacing is so how do you say, like so accurate. You have to be always thinking consistently. Now, with letter O, you can see that with the letter O, we use a lozenge and a lozenge and back to the vertical. Okay, so you need to open it up a little bit because otherwise the O can be a little bit too narrow than one pen width. So the idea is you want to have like the one pen width, the one pen width here. And lastly, before move on to the miniskirts, I want to show you also the A. There you have the vertical. Now we use a lozenge here and the top as well. Then we use a vertical. And then now for this one, we end it with a quadrant. Okay, like that. Because if we make the leg here the same lozenge, you will notice it looks really weird. It looks like it's elongated A. Now, hopefully that's give you a concept, right? So the idea is, if you want to open up the space, you can use a lozenge to make it. So for the letters, when we learn later, you notice that sometimes it's a quadrant, sometimes it's a lozenge. Coming back to this page here, if you want to check whether your letters, the spaces between the letters are equal, you can always do something like this. You cover it. Um, so I'm just showing you by covering, you can see if it's consistent, right? The white space. So you can always check. If I place it here immediately, I mean, this is a very dramatic example, right? If I cover it, you can see that there's a much wider space here. It's not consistent. So sometimes when you do practice a page of writing, you can use, just cover it and check the spacing. Now we'll talk with the straight line letters. You have first, now it should be faster now because we have the concept. So we can do first, the square diamond, quadrant, vertical, you come down straight, and then another quadrant, and close it with a quadrant. Okay, put the dot as a quadrant. Now what we need to notice here is the dot placement. It should be aligning to the X height. So a quadrant and a quadrant. Now, do you remember in the slideshow, I said that I've, um, the over time, the letters might have, like right a little bit faster and the movement, there's variation basically. So the other way to do this, you can do, and instead of lifting, you come straight down and then come down. You see, this is different because if I look at the way I write this is 1, 2, and 3. This is 1, okay? So that's pen lift. But to speed it up, you can do 1, 2, 3 in one go. Now, I think it's really your personal choice. I think currently I've seen a lot more this style. But when I look at the medieval manuscripts, sometimes it's a combination of both. I guess it's like they're writing hundreds and hundreds of pages, in a week. So when you actually zoom in, they're not really super consistent. Even the streaks are not super strict. But this is the concept, right? So there are two kind of like version. Now you can also move upwards with your nib. So you have a line before doing this. This is another variation. You can also move up to have a little bit of a tick. Now the dot, you can also use just a hairline, okay? So these are variations. So the first one is just, um, the way I want to teach as the base. Like that, okay? Now for letter L, we have a long vertical. Now, when you do such a long straight line, don't, don't be lazy and make sure you have your arm able to move down. This applies to a pointed pen calligraphy as well, when you have a big line to draw. So you want to make sure you relax and be able to pull the line. So for 45 degree, you come all the way down to about here. So let's try. It's a bit wobbly. Overthinking can be a killer as well. I think this is better. Okay. Now, both of them, you can add the diamond back, the square diamond, I mean, like that. So that's an L. So when I overthink, it's obviously shaking. So just learn to be totally relaxed, like normal breathing, don't hold your breath. So that's a quadrant, right? These two are the same. Now, you can also do a lozenge. Come down, relax, relax, relax. Nope. Now, and then a lozenge. Like that. So one vertical line. So this one is 1 and 2. So that is a lifting, right? For this one, this variation or this style, you do it in one single stroke. Now, I've also seen in the medieval manuscript, so you come down and then you have the quadrant and they add a flag, a soft curve. So it will be 1, 2, and a soft curve in a flag. You can call this a flag. Now, notice that when you add the flag, this is a quadrant. I think if you make it too long, let's try it. If you make a lozenge and then this, it almost looks like a C, an elongated C, right? So we want to avoid that. So I think this is question markable. I mean, I need to look into it because I've seen in the the 14th century manuscript, this is a shorter, and then when they have the flag, this is usually shorter, not as long. Okay, so I will stick with using the shorter one because it just look more, it balances it in a way, like, it's just, yeah. Now, so I put a question mark. I need to, like really find more examples from manuscript. I'm gonna, sorry, change the color because my felt pen just finished using the ink. Now, this one is a K. So we start with this here, a vertical. Then we do the quadrant. Now we place the nib immediately here at the corner. Okay, right at the corner. Don't overlap it. You do a lozenge and you pull a little bit of line down like that. Then I will put a horizontal line and a vertical, come down until, notice here, this corner is touching the baseline. And then you add the flag with the S curve like that. Now there is a variation, the many variation actually. Now this is when I mean, when you ask different people to cook the same fried rice, they're different, this is how I felt about the different um people, like they add their own flair, I guess, right back then. So you have the same structure first, right? Now the only change is you come down. Instead of coming horizontal, you can do, let's change color. You can do this. And then you keep it vertical and a flag like that. So the only difference is this stroke and this stroke. Now another variation, these are the variations I find when I zoom into the manuscript. Okay, so you have this and you pull the line here. Oops. Now this one, instead of doing two strokes, it's just one vertical, sorry, diagonal that come down like that. Now you can have it without a flag. So this version is without flag. I think without a flag, usually I forgot it's a little bit taller. So I should add it to make it a bit taller. Okay. Now another way, so many different variations you can do in one movement. Okay, one movement. Then you add the diamond square. And then you come down, let's say you do horizontal. And then you come down and out. Do you see the main difference here is instead of starting with the vertical, you're adding in one continuous line, actually, one continuous line, then add this one. So this is number one, this is number two. And notice the leg here is different, right? This ending has a matching quadrant. And you can make it like a lozenge as well. You can make it a little bit longer. So these are the variation for K. And I think there are lots more if you look into the manuscript. Now, for T, you starting, notice that I place the nib on the waistline and then you pull a vertical. And then I put a lozenge. Now, this is a lozenge. I'll explain why later. Now, then you place the pen nib onto the waistline and pull a horizontal line. Okay, I'll do one more time for this without talking too much. I'll lift my pen, count 1, 2, 3, then coming back here and pull a horizontal line. Now notice that when you do this, this top here, right, it's quite flat. It's almost a 45-degree angle like that. This is a lozenge. And the way I describe why there's a lozenge is because when you have just a dot here, it doesn't, because it's open space here, right? You want to make it more like the letters to stay on the ground more firmly so that you make this a bit longer. And also notice that, when you place this coming down, they're more balanced in a way. If you make this a bit shorter, it can feel like the top is kind of tumbling forward. So when it's an open side, right? So it's called open side letter. So C, E, R. Later we learn that when it's open on the side, we use a lozenge instead of the quadrant, instead of the square diamond. Now, a variation, you can bring this a bit higher. So not that high, but maybe midway, uh, in the ascender, about midpoint, you start coming down. Then of course you can connect them as well, okay, in one go. And then you can keep this the same. Now notice the main difference is here is instead of like a 45-degree connection, this is not connected. It's a clear white space here. I can draw out this, I guess, a color a bit of here to show you this area, right? I think I made it worse, but I'll do one more. One stroke, a lozenge, and the same. So I want to highlight this is different from that. And then in order to open it up, you need to bring the vertical a little bit higher, as in make it taller. So structures, it's one stroke. This is a lozenge, and then the horizontal. Okay. So that's one page. Now let me get the second page here. The straight line letters also have the X. Now for the X, you can do in one stroke like that. Okay. This is not breaking up. You can just continue in one stroke. And then what you do is you bring your nib down from about midpoint, comes vertical, so overlap or retrace, and pull it to create a thin hairline. So you have to go back to the ink and pull it. Now, if you're using a pen, broad edge pen with dip ink nib, I would suggest to do it kind of slowly because you don't want to pull out the ink from the first stroke. Okay, so you want to, do the first stroke, And then I'll pay extra attention and make it a slow motion and curve to the left to create this little lake, right? This really hairline. Now then you pull a horizontal line. Oh, sorry, the third one is here, the little flag. Now it has a soft curve. Then the last stroke is the horizontal line. So the first, the second is you come in here, starting from here. So that is a retrace going on, which is not very common in lower cases. Okay. We don't tend to do a lot of retraces, but to retrace to create this lick, then we do the top flag and then the horizontal line. Now, you can also make it straight as well. Sorry, I've done this. Then you can make it straight as well without a curve. That's okay as well. So it can be a straight. This one to compare is a curved line, okay? And I also would notice that you want to make it, they are more or less kind of like symmetrical, right? So you don't want this to be super long. For example, you don't want this to be like, I mean, I'm making it dramatic, but unless it's for a design, this is too long here. It might look really cool for a hair salon, like to emphasize the hair. One of your design, definitely you can think about it, but if you base on the basic, that is way too long. It's not symmetrical. Okay. Now we do the letter J. Again, I'll show you different variation. The first one we'll just do, this should be, it looks quite long, but it should be the quadrant. Okay, so we make a note here, a quadrant. So a diamond square, square diamond, you come down, whoops, come down into a straight line, just like that, and a diamond. Now, on its own, you can say, oh, this doesn't really look like a J, but when it's written together with all others, when an I is placed next to it, the I has to be shorter, right? Because the I will be like that. So you can tell that this is a J and this is an I. Now, for another variation, so the first one, let me just also write down 1 and 2, and this is my 3. Now, a variation will be doing in one strokes, right? So you can start from here, it's vertical, like that. Sorry, it's a bit not straight. So that's, again, it's using a quadrant. Then you add the dot. Okay. Now, you can also do a fishtail. So it looks like this. So you connect in one stroke, and then you pull it a bit longer. Then you start twisting, turning your pen. So basically, they should both touching the paper, but then you slightly lifting the right corner up as you're coming down so that you create this hairline with the, we call it like a fishtail style. So it's just one stroke. But notice I start to manipulate my pen by rotating with my thumb. So let me demonstrate again. I will rotate with my, not so early, but here, rotate so that, only the tip of the nib on the left corner is touching the paper. Sorry, this one. So I'm remaining using the tip to do this line, okay? So this is when I was rushing, so we don't want this one, okay? So that's a fishtail variation. So you can also not add a dot. So this one is without dot. So that's quite a few ways. And then one last variation I want to give you. You're doing one stroke, come down, you lift. Now coming from here, maybe a bit too close. You're coming from here and connect with the curve. So one stroke coming this way with the curve. And you can use just like a tick up, okay? Now, to summarize, so we don't want this one, you can have either with a dot, with a diamond square, so the quadrant. You can have nothing, no dots, or you can have this like a dash kind of, I don't know how to describe this, but this line here, okay? So you just bring your nib upwards. The same with the pointed, sorry, I keep saying pointed nib, but with the dip pen, you just come up lightly with the hairline, okay? Now for F, a vertical into a lozenge. Number two, just a lozenge. Like that. So you have come straight, lozenge. That's number one. Number two, and vertical line, sorry, horizontal line number three. Now for variation, you can have it without the lozenge at the base. You can bring it all the way as a vertical. And then you stop where the corner touches your baseline. Okay. And then you can have the remaining the same, like that. Now, if you want, you can also make it a flag on the top. So you can see that these are all kind of like repeating now, right? You can make it a flag, soft curve. This is a curved. I've seen Annie Zizel's work. She has this. So you come down vertical, and then she would do this curve this way and twist. So I'm having the left corner touching and I twist my pen into a fishtail. Now she put her the crossbar a little bit lower, like that. So this is Annie Sazel's, I find it in her book version and I quite like it. It's nice. I think this is very quite a different way. This is definitely open up a lot more spaces. But as you study textura, really you will see so many variation. And if you ask, oh, can I use this and that? As long as you get the exemplar from I would say from medieval manuscript is always kind of a good source, right, of reference. And but when I use, let's say, the quadrant and the vertical, let's say the I and the J, I'll keep this style the same. So if I'm doing, I just come quickly here. If I'm doing the I, All right, the space is a bit less. Let's say N then, okay? I have no space to put a dot. So if I'm doing this, and I will keep having the same uh, pattern. So what I mean is if I have the the quadrant here and then the vertical like this way, then I like to keep it the same so it's more consistent. I hope it shows up. So like that. Now versus what I mean is if I'm doing coming straight down and straight down, you see it looks similar, but the way it's written is different, slightly different. And don't know if you noticed that subtle difference. It's this is in one stroke, right? All one, all one. This is diamond, square diamond, come down, square diamond. Okay? So I would, if I use this, then I try to match all my, word letters the same method. If I'm doing this, then I'll be using this method for that piece. Now for letter A, I'm gonna keep going and speed up a little bit. So you have the vertical. This is a lozenge. You need to open up a little bit space for the interior, right? Then that's a lozenge. You come straight down and then you do a quadrant here. So you have a lozenge and a quadrant and a lozenge. I'm gonna use a different color so it popped out a little bit better. First stroke. So this is count 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. This is also 1, 2, 3. And then here is the vertical. So first of all, this is your letter O, right? To make an A, you use this one is shorter. Okay. So sometimes it's not very, that difference is very minimal. Really, it is very minimal. But if you try to make it like a quadrant, like a square here, you notice it's really hard to keep the interior spacing one pen width. Okay, you want to make it a one pen width. So you want to use this to open it up a little bit. Now, another way to do this is you can use a curve here like that. Usually the tail comes up a little bit. Now, another A that is very different is you go down to start 1/3. So if we have let's put you have this, maybe my pen is a little bit narrower, but what I want to say is you start about here. So after 2 pen width, you start lower. Okay, you start lower, come down, do a lozenge. Now the rest is the same. You just do a lozenge and a diamond, a square diamond. Now here you will use your nib to come up here so that it goes into a circle shape. I think I'm still making it too high, so let's make it lower. You use the tip of your left corner, starting at this corner, okay? Then you roll this circle, outline this circle shape, oops, into here. So this is used very, very often, but definitely creates a challenge, especially if you're beginner. If you find it tricky, I mean, definitely practice a lot, but if you're writing a page, you want to get a little bit more perfect lettering on your, let's say, a final piece, you can use this A as well. The first A we learn, basically writing an O. Okay. So this one I would consider still quite high. It should be, this is nicer looking. I think this is proportionally a bit too high. So keep it about 3 pen width. That. Okay, now moving on, we have page 41. So letter O. Now we should be more familiar with this 45-degree lozenge, a lozenge, and a vertical. So 1, 2, 1, 2, hold on, sorry, sometimes 3, 4, yes. I got distracted. You want to make sure, as we do the introduction earlier, is as clean as possible. They should just be touching each other. And you should remain a 1 pen width in the middle for the spacing. Now for B, vertical, make sure you don't pull all the way down to the baseline because you need to create this space for the lozenge to come down. So count 1, 2, 3, then you have 1, 2, 3, vertical, like that. So you will see that basically this is your O. Okay, I'm gonna use the yellow so that you know this form is hiding in this circle letters group. So I will say 1. You can do it in one movement because it's connected. And 2, like that. And again, you want to make sure it's 1 pen width for that. Now, for D, we will start from here on the left. Oh, by the way, B, we have variation. I forgot. I'll come back to the O as well. You can do this curve and this curve and vertical. Now, this comes later in the century, really, it's at the beginning, it's very strict and curves start to be introduced because I think it's related to speed. It's just like also it gives some more like movement to it. If you're using the curve, right? And I would suggest add the curve to other letters when you can. Let's say if I'm doing an A, I want to curve it up a little bit, then I will curve it because then it will match better with each other. You don't want to have an O like this and then the A is very like straight and not curvy. So you need to, like make use of the same style together. Now B, also there's a variation. So come here and straight and like that in one stroke. Then the rest remain the same like this. So that's also your little variation. We learned about this earlier. If, as a reminder, we did it for the K, right? So we come down for this K, we did, this side you can have many variation, right? So you can mix and match. So when you have this style, you can use for B and K together. Now, also one more variation for B is you can, like the O, you curve and you curve this part. Okay, so I think this is a little bit wider than one pen width, so I'm gonna redo it. You have the vertical. This is more of a one pen width here. Okay. So again, it's curving it, create this variation. And I think it's definitely more cool style, less rigid. Now for D, you have this, then a straight diagonal down and vertical. So you want to keep this straight. You can see that the O, it's hiding here. Okay. Now, for variation, you can change the top a little bit. So instead of a straight line, you can curve this way. I find this less pleasing to the eyes. I've seen it in an exemplar from medieval manuscript. I prefer curving. Oops. Say I curve both like that. So, so both curve or curved. Okay. And I like this one more personally. So again, if you are going to create the same style, you can use the curve as your own, like the whole, how do you say, like the whole page with this style. Now for Q, you have a vertical, the lozenge, and then you have a lozenge, and then a vertical. You want to stop at the second ascender, right? I mean the not the second ascender, but the ascender line here, and you want to lift it up to create a sharp, clean corner. Now, this is a lozenge because we want to, well, it is a letter O, right? So the letter O here. Now, this lozenge, you can do one continued line as well. And the lozenge. Now, the base, you can add, I've seen this, which I find it a little bit weird, but a diamond, a square diamond. So it goes like this. This is a lozenge. This is a lozenge here. Notice this is quadrant, but what is interesting is it's a lake, a little lake here. You can also do a fishtail. You can break it or you can write continuously, up to you. Then you come here. Now, as you're coming down, rotate the pen so that the left corner is touching the paper and you want to make this like hairline. So you rotate and bring it down like that. So this is a fishtail version. So if I use a fishtail, I might combine with the J, with any variation that you can do this effect, or the F, the F like the NSSL one, if I combine this and this, then they will complement each other, I would say. And lastly, the Q, I'm giving you all this variation because I think, it's just quite simple anyway. It's just either curvature or straight line. So, and I think once you learn black letter, you know, all other broad edge calligraphy will become a little bit easier. I'm sorry, I'm talking and I have hesitation here so you can see the line is not smooth. But the idea here is you just change it to a curve, which is what we've been doing with the D and the Q or the B or the A or O. Okay, so you can definitely do this, to have more flow in your letters. Now, moving on to page 42. I think I'll look at the chat box later because I know there was some questions or maybe someone leaving, but sorry, I'm focusing to try to finish this on time. Now I have the P, you have one straight line. Now this is actually very interesting. So let me try to do it first. Okay. I will retry it, but what I'm trying to do is I'll come down and move the right to this side so that it will then become a flat base instead of sharp base. You stop here above the baseline and then you pull the diagonal here. You want to make sure the point is touching the point, they're not overlapping. Now I want to demonstrate this one again. So instead of at a 45, I'm rotating it um, clockwise so that the point will go to more flat. So kind of feel like this. Okay. So my nib will come down, rotating into a flat point. So that it's one style you can use. And in fact, in Textura, another discovery I had, so I'll show you this page. This is from the medieval calligraphy book that I used. And I would find this style, Gothic Textura Precisions, I think, maybe. What is interesting is they cut off the legs. It's all flat. Maybe to save time. Haven't read about the history of it, but I just find it very interesting. For me, it just make it looking even harder for, legibility for my modern eyes. But this definitely is one of the style, which is quite interesting. And I want to introduce it to you. You can try it for the letter P. So you basically turning. So if I look at my finger, I'm coming down at a 45 and I will twist so that while twisting and coming down at the same time so that I will create like the flat bottom here at this point. Okay, and definitely need some practice. Now, if you really struggle and don't like that, you can simply just keep it at a 45 and you can create the rest. Now, you can also make a curve here, right? So changing it to a curve. You can also create a fishtail here. Let me try. Now, to create the fishtail, so basically, I'm just using the left corner of the nib and I'll lift up the right so that I will create just a hairline at the end. So coming down, touching, both corners touching the paper, slowly rotate it anti-clockwise with the left corner touching the page. And you can always like practice on your paper a lot to try to get a nice transition. Okay, so create that and practice with that. And then you complete the rest, either a straight or you can make it curve on the top as well, curve on the bottom as well. Okay, so you can add all these elements of your letter variations. Now G, you have one and two, and one, you can do a lozenge in a continuous line, a lozenge. Now this is coming straight and curved to the right. So you just slow gently at this corner. Instead of pen lifting, you can continue coming to the right hand side. So kind of like an A, but elongated. Then I'll lift my pen and I will start from the left, curve back to this side. Okay, so ideally is the two corners are just touching each other. So that's the first one. Now, there are variations, same, I mean, the subtle difference is you can bring this curve more, as in longer, and create, oops, a longer line. Then you come back. Okay, so you opening up this space here. Let me, I think I get the yellow here. It will show better. You see this one here, it has more white space, right? Where the yellow is. So I'll do one more time to show you this. Longer, use a tail. I usually lift my pen so that the left corner is touching the page. Make it a bit longer and then I come just connect it here. So I open up this space as well. It's very subtle difference. Um, you can also make this, this curve both and just remaining the same. Okay. So with these variation. Now for you, a quadrant, the vertical, a lozenge, opening up the base so that it's not too close. We need to create a one pen width. Now the quadrant, a lozenge, now ending with a quadrant. So I write down QQ, a lozenge, and a quadrant. So you want to open up the space. Now the variation is just coming down immediately in one continuous line. Like that. So it is the same quadrant, quadrant, lozenge, quadrant, but it's just a different way of like technique, I would say, in one continuous line. This is breaking into one, and this is two, and then this is three. Now for M, you have quadrant, oops, coming from the center straight down, and then add another quadrant, make it longer into lozenge, and then you come down longer, opening up the space. I think one of the thing is when you have no guide, make sure that you don't end up making it too long. Sometimes it's, if you're just practicing, don't make it too long. You see, when it's too long, the white space in the middle becomes too wide, right? We explained this, earlier. So you really want to avoid this. So it's a big no. So you want to practice until your lozenge is just like kind of like long enough to allow you to fit one pen width inside. Now for the variation, you can do just continuous in one. So instead of breaking it, you're doing lozenge, straight, a quadrant. Okay? Sorry, that's a little bit lower, but the idea is how you break them down. Now, of course, you can add a variation. Very simple way to have a variation is you make this a curve, soft curve, soft curve, like that. Okay, that's a variation. Now for the N, now letter N, very same as your M. So you have the quadrant, a vertical and a quadrant, a lozenge, longer one, and then you come down and back to a quadrant. So quadrant, lozenge, quadrant, quadrant. Now you can have one continuous line, as I said. I guess personally, I like to break it because I'm used to engross script and I'm used to pen lifting. And yeah, but you can definitely try both. This is just my personal, experience because when I do engross script, I lift between the up and the down stroke. And I feel like I have better control when I do breaking down all the strokes. But when I can see that in the older times when monks have to write so many pages, they really just like doing this, it's a lot faster in a way. And so you can try both techniques, see which one fits you better. Okay, so that's breaking down, that's one continuous line. Now, what I want to demonstrate is just by putting this into a curvature, right? So instead of just a straight line, you can curve it and come down like that. So you can have this variation. Now with the H, a vertical, a quadrant, then a lozenge, a vertical. Again, notice where I stop. The corner would touch the waistline, and the baseline, I mean. Now another way for variation. By the way, this is a quadrant. You don't want to make it a lozenge because it's too long, it would touch this side, right? So you want to keep it open. Now we have a lozenge here. You can come down. Now I slightly rotate the nib so that I create a hairline. So I will come down with both touching the paper and I will rotate anti-clockwise with my thumb and then until the right corner is lifted up the page and the left is touching to create this fishtail. Okay. You can also do this one connection, one strokes, then one stroke here as well if you want. You come out like that. This is a variation. This will match, if you remember, this will go well with the K. The way I think about it is like HK, Hong Kong. So you can have this. So it's matching. Now W has to be a quadrant because you want to have white space because you want to have open top space. So you can't make a lozenge because it's too long and will close it. But the bottom, you can use a lozenge because the lozenge is longer, it will close the bottom. Now, if this happen, usually what I do is I will use the left corner to close it slightly with the hairline. So it's still kind of visually, even though it's a little bit wider, but that helps that to be closed back. Okay, so we will write this quadrant, 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 lozenge, lozenge. Now, for variation, again, same concept, just connecting them into one. Oops. And I flick it back. That one is not too accurate. Let's see if I can fix it. Maybe this is one stroke. Okay, this is split into three strokes. Now for variation, now obviously we can't add a fishtail here on the bottom, but we can do the curve like that. Can use curve as your little variation. Now for phi, same as your W. It's exactly like a W. Because when you say W, it's WV, right? Sorry, two V's. It's a W. So basically, this is the same. So you have a quadrant and a lozenge here. Now, break it 1, 2, 3. Now, you know what's coming is continuation of the line. Okay, so you can have continuation. So again, quadrant, quadrant, lozenge, nothing changed. Bottom part, you can do curve like that as a variation. So you can see basically it's the same concept. Now we have the next page, Y. So we have the quadrant, come down, the lozenge, quadrant, like the G, you come down, go out, lift your pen, you curve back in so that these two corners touch each other. Now you can, as I said, make it longer. So let me try. You can make it longer. I use the left corner. So come here and rotate it anti-clockwise until the left corner is touching the paper and just, have a bit of hairline because this is where I can connect the hairline. So immediately opening up the bottom spaces. So if you're to compare these two white spaces, you can see this is more open, okay? So quadrant, quadrant, this is a lozenge. I don't think you have to memorize it because the way I write it down is just I want to analyze for you. But when you write more, you just know that, okay, you can't use a quadrant here because then the spacing is too narrow, right? And when it shows you visually, you just feel like it's a bit weird. Then, okay, let's try using a bit longer. And it just becomes more natural when you write them more. Now, for C, very straightforward. You can have a vertical into a lozenge and then a slight curve here, like that. That's your C. Now, this is a lozenge, and you notice that we have to, for the open side letters, we will use a lozenge here, not a quadrant, because you want to keep that sitting firmly on the ground, because there's nothing else here as well. So visually, you need to take up a little bit more space so that it's standing on the ground. Now, if I try, I'll show you. If I just use a, the the quadrant, not a lozenge. Do you see that? It's just really, the C is completely weak. It's not even legible, right? So if this is using a quadrant and a quadrant, so this is a bad example, okay? So it just doesn't sit very well. That's why you want to have a lozenge. That's a lozenge as well because it's longer to make it standing firmly, okay? So this is a very important concept. Stand firmly on the ground, okay? On the ground, like that. And also notice that, if you are aligning this, they are kind of like same space. This come out a little bit, stick out a little bit, but you can see that it's sitting nice and firm. Now, for variation wise, you can use a curve here. So you can make it a curve. And then this is a more dramatic curve as well, like that. So you use a curve for the C. Now for the letter E, again, a lozenge, longer version. Then here, I'll use a quadrant and then I'll pull with a hairline using the left corner. So I'll pull it downwards, okay, hitting back to the vertical stamps, vertical strokes. So for here, I would think it's a lozenge and this is a shorter one, a quadrant. Now for the E, the reason is if I do, let's say, a lozenge here, and then I do a lozenge and you pull it down with the corner, that immediately this white space becomes the inside space of the letter become too wide. Do you see that? Right? So this is again a bad example, okay? Because this is a lozenge here is too long. So the way I remember is, you want to keep the top open, this little anterior space, the loop, right? Kind of like a loop, um, shorter, and then you can pull down with, you can either pull with both the whole nib flat on the paper and just pull it, or you can use the corner. The corner will give you a better hairline. If you use both nib to come down, it works as well. So this applies to a broad edge nib as well. So if I use a broad edge nib, I can rotate it using the left corner, do you see? And I pull it down, or I can keep it flat and pull it down. Both will work. But when you have both nips, sorry, the whole nip touching, you have to be very light because you might end up having more ink that will run out. So that's the E. Now, E doesn't have a lot of variation, but if you want a variation, you can, of course, you can curve it up like that. This is any Casel's variation I've seen. She bring this a little bit down, okay, and she used like a vertical like that. So that's an E. But that's very different from what we've been saying. I think this is definitely adding a lot more kind of like curve and like flourish. Sometimes, you can have it take it up very dramatically. But if you want to keep it very clean and simple, very, these are the ones that I suggest, right? But these are variation that I've seen it as well. Now R is you have the quadrant, vertical, a lozenge, so that like CER, standing firmly, okay? And then you have just a quadrant like that. Now you can also do in one continuous line, quadrant into a vertical into a lozenge. And then here you just do the same. So this is just what we've been learning. Continue line. This is breaking it up into 3 strokes. Okay, this is one stroke. You can, of course, make a curve, make it longer, and you can make a curve. So you just gently move down with a soft curve like that. Now we just have two letters remaining, so S and Z. So now S is always a challenging one, always quite a tricky one, but it will still stay within the letter O form. So if I put the letter O here first, you can see that it will have the same width, right? So the one pen width. Now, I use this one because this is the one that I find quite easy and because broad edge letter S is really not easy. But this one I like because basically it's a short vertical. Then you have, this is the quadrant. Now you do it in one stroke, you can if you want, but I'm breaking it for with colors. Now we have another quadrant. Then you have a vertical here. Then obviously you have the bottom. You can make it straight if you want to keep it simple, just a straight line, a lozenge and a lozenge. If you break it this way, it's easy to not ask for SOS help. So this actually end up to be quite a nice way to make it accurate. So you have a vertical quadrant. So I want to write down the quadrant is here, quadrant is here. This is a vertical, then this is a lozenge. Okay, you see how I break it down. Now when I write it, I can do a short vertical into the diamond, square diamond, so the quadrant, and another square diamond and straight into a vertical. So I don't lift it. I just do one, two. Then I go three. Now I said you can do a straight line or you can make it into a soft curve like that. Okay. And then you can have the top a curve as well. So either they can be like just straight or curve. So that's your variation. So I do one next to it, one stroke, second stroke. You can just keep it a lozenge and a lozenge, same form but slight different um, lines here. This is straight, that's straight. Now there's many variations I've seen like doing a line crossing, but I would not go into this detail. It's meant to be completely basic for today. Now Z. Z you have a lozenge. You can move the whole nib down 45 degree, a horizontal line, a horizontal line into a vertical like that. Then you can come slight curve, very slight curve to create that so that you will end up touching each other. Now, you can also have a curve here and a vertical. So the whole nib is touching the paper, just move it vertically at 45 degree into a horizontal and a straight like that. You can do a complete vertical, that's okay, as in like straight, but it looks a bit weird, right? It does look a little bit, for me, it's not very beautiful. I like it to have a curve. You can do that, or you can have top and bottom in a curve. So see both here a curve. So this is very nice and giving a bit more dimension than this is quite flat. Now I've also seen other example, a curve Now this time it's just completely come down into a long vertical and then an S curve almost like that. And you have a horizontal line as a Z. So you have a curve to go up, number one, and down is just using the whole pen width on a 45-degree. Keep a hairline. And then number three, it's an S curve. It starts from here, curving up, down, and up again, right? So you have this S curve on the baseline. Then you just do a a horizontal line in the middle, just a horizontal line like that. Okay. Now that's I cover all the lower cases. Now I also did something like this because I want to talk about if I'm using not felt tip pen, right? Because felt tip pen, you can use it at the beginning when you learn, and it's great for letter forms. But really, if you want to up your skills, I think it's better to go to using a nib. So this was written with this nib, okay, the William Mitchell. I love William Mitchell's nib, and I pretty much use them most of the time. So this is my pen case, and I usually just uh, using a Posca pen, writing really chunkily because I can't see the number after a while. And I know that, like the number two, 3.5, and so that's how I personally like it. It's not very elegant at all, but it's just practical. I can see it immediately when you use a broad edge nib. Um, for a smaller number, uh, uh, actually the larger number, it should be the other way. So let's pick up, let's see. Let's say a size 4, okay? This is called size 4, it's narrower. So the pen width, it's a very small tip. When I use this, I will write tiny calligraphy. For example, this piece, it's not finished yet, it's on vellum. But you can see I can write very, very small writing. I think I use a 5 even, like 5 or 6 for this size of letter. Really tiny writing. Now, if you make it a larger number, this is a size 0 or 1. I can't see it. It's been scribbled. I think it's a 1, sorry. When it's go up to 1, yeah, it's a 1 here. It's really dark, but I can kind of see it. I use a reservoir. You can buy this. It's detachable. It just attached to the nib, and I definitely use it because when you have a wider nib, you want it to hold more inks. So I will use a reservoir. But for the narrower nib, like the size 4 or 5, I think it goes up to 6. The tiny, tiny nibs, I don't use a reservoir because it just very small writing. So that's what you need to know. Now, when I also talk about if you choose the nib, the other brand that is very popular is the Speedball. Speedball is have the C nibs. They call it C because they have A, B, and I think a D. But those are A and B and D. They are not for this style of writing because sometimes they have a circle tip. So Speedball have the C nibs. We call them C nibs, and the C nibs you can use it as well. Now, the C0 and C1 can go up to really wide. If you are looking for something wider than William Mitchell, then you can use Speedball. But personally, I find it harder to use because it's softer. It springs more, like it as in, I find it harder to use personally. And I find this too long. When it's too long, I feel like I don't have much control. And the work I do is usually very precise, manuscript, I mean, so precise that this is done. Let me show you these were done. I've made a batch of these for fun. These are little pen rest made of clay. And I use clay to make this, and I painted it and also calligraphy using the William Mitchell nib painting, calligraphy on it. And I like using the Mitchell nibs because they're shorter. I feel I have better control. For the Speedball, even they have the smaller width, right? The smaller nib. It's too long. I find it so hard to control. So personally, Speedball nib, sorry, I don't use it often. I do practice with it before, but I prefer the Metro nib. And these are little pen rest is very cute. Like that. It's I won't say it's easy to make, it just takes a long time. Almost 5 hours, 4 to 5 hours each. And I've been making a couple of them. I really enjoy making it. It's so therapeutic. I varnish it as well. Um, okay, I'm gonna put this on the side. Now, I will bring a piece of paper. I won't demonstrate the whole alphabet. I would just show you how I use. Now, I also was talking about the ink, right? Sorry, I forgot this part here. Now, what I've done is like, for me, I want to understand the ink, so the best is to do a comparison. So there are a couple of inks. They are what I use for black letter. There's benefit and there are disadvantages. So the first one is the Sumi ink, the Japanese Sumi ink. And the Sumi ink, this one, what I find it's because it's Sumi. I'm sure if you're a calligrapher, you have used Sumi ink before. It's quite thick, right? So you can't get a super sharp lines, I find it. And also, the good thing is it's very dark. But it dry very slow because there's so much pigment that it just dry really slow. And when it dry, it has a bit of a glossy finish. It's a bit shiny. So I don't really like shiny finish. I like it to be matte. So it's an ink I would, like if you find it, I'm sure it's pretty easy to get it on Paper and Ink Arts or Amazon. You can try this one or other brands of Sumi, but not my absolute favorite, but definitely very easy to buy this ink. Now, I like Higgins. I would say out of everything, Higgins is one of my favorite, and Higgins they have, for the black one, they have Eternal and Calligraphy. Now, there is a bit of difference I noticed when you write with it. They're both black ink. Um, I can't remember which one is waterproof. It's not written on here. But anyway, oh, here, waterproof blacking. And this is just sets blacking. So I assume this is not waterproof. Um, Anyway, with the Higgins Eternal, I put a heart. I really like it because it's not so pigmented. And what I notice is I have much sharper lines. When I write it, I really notice the crisp hairline that I can create. And it dry much faster than the Sumi ink. And it's not completely black. That's, I guess, a downside. But if you want some artwork that is not too harsh, a little bit softer look. I think it when the ink is not, let's say here, when it's not it's a little bit less ink, it becomes light like a gray wash, right? So it's have a more gentle look to it. It has a matte finish, and I mentioned it has a sharp hairline. I will also scan this on the class demo sheet for you. Now, the Higgins calligraphy ink, I find it not as great as the Eternal. It's okay for the pen, like pointed pen calligraphy, because when we write pointed pen, it's a lot thinner. But when you write with a broad edge, I noticed the color is not consistent. And I think it just, sometimes darker, sometimes lighter. Even I have loaded the nib with a lot of ink. And but the benefit is it's dry fast. And I wrote it's not completely black and it's matte finish. I wouldn't say this is something I would go for. Definitely love Higgins Eternal. Now, a couple of years ago, I was introduced to the Speedball Super Black ink. You might have heard of it, Super Black. Definitely worth trying. It's quite a dream to work with. It feels like a bit buttery to paint to write with. It said super black. It is super black and it dries really black and it doesn't have like half fainted lines, right? It's quite solid and I think it's great for manuscript if you want that really consistent, chunky look, um, kind of consistent black letter texture. I wrote dry faster than Sumi. It still takes a bit of time to dry because it's high pigment, right? When it's high pigment, it will be more opaque, more black, but it dries still faster than Sumi, slower than Higgins, and it's very, very black and it has a matte finish. So, if I had, and I believe it's waterproof. It must be written here somewhere. Yeah, I remember it's waterproof because I think, wow, this is such a great ink for especially commission work. Um, anyway, so this is a little bit comparison I did. Now I'm gonna just quickly doing a demo with a nib. I'm gonna use the Higgins Eternal. So I always pour it out onto a little container. I never dip directly into the bottle of ink. First of all, the reason is if you open it up and dip it, there's a water will evaporate during the writing, right? So the water evaporate and meaning your ink just, get less and less. Secondly, if you knock down the whole bottle by accident, your whole bottle is gone. So that's really a waste. So I always pour into a small ink jar. This is just a little ink container, right? And I labeled it because all the black ink looks exactly the same once you open it. So I always label my ink and I know which ink I'm using. Now I will put this on the side. Now I'm using the Higgins. And as I said, let's find my pen nib. And I need to have a ruler somewhere here. Okay, there you go. Now what I do is when I draw, I can always put the baseline first because or you can have the base or you can have it as the top, the center line. Now I would dip this into ink, right? I would tap on the side a couple of times. Now I will also have a scrap piece of paper and I will just do an ink flow test. And I think the reason why teaching, with uh for me, like with the felt tip or if I use the pilot parallel pen, it's a lot easier. Because with the dip nib, you never really are sure with the ink flow until you test it out. Now, once you have this, you can pull the line, the square, right? I do just the X height for now. See, sometimes it just doesn't work well. Pull it. I want to make sure the corner is touching the corner. So we have 5, right? So then we have this as the X height. I'm going to estimate and align this. Now I have this X height. You can do the same for the descender and ascender, and then you add the pencil line. So I won't do it, but I'm just going to demonstrate if I write, for example, how I do it. Again, with this, you just have to have some patience, because obviously the first several strokes, you can have a lot of ink. So this is how you write it. I like the Mitchell nib because it's so much easier to control, really, like that. And also, they come with a size that is small, and it's perfect for me to do manuscript. As you can see, I was able to even write on clay. So now sometimes this happened, the ink just stopped running and then I would dip a little bit longer, right? So that it's soaked in. Now, other thing you can do is using a brush to load the ink. So you grab usually a brush that you will be happy to sacrifice it in a way because once you dip it, it's gonna turn black for I want to say forever, but it's sting the whole. You can just load it like that. Apply the ink onto your nib. I put a bit of pressure. It go down through this reservoir. There's some holes here, right? So we apply, and I would touch the top a little bit. Now, and then I hold the brush with my left hand, and I would just write like that. And usually, from my experience, the first 2 lines, obviously, you have a lot of ink. So that's when I will go to my scrap paper and I will just take off the excessive ink. Maybe I'll do a couple of strokes. So if I after loaded it, and then I will try on the paper because sometimes you will have a lot of ink that comes out. Especially, I also did the IMPEF certification for minimum. I want to spell minimum, then I'll finish this part. And when I did the IMPEF certification for foundational hand, and I did Rapid Old English, which is two different styles, and I would spend so much time, trying to brush this and not brush in front of my artwork, right? Because when you brush, sometimes this happens. You see the ink just splatter onto your artwork. So always you have to move your hand away from the writing area, apply the ink, test it on a separate paper, and coming back. So it's a long process. Minimum. Okay, sorry, I got distracted. So vertical diamond, and I definitely encourage you to practice this word because you will see all your verticals and you can check where they are straight enough by covering the top. So I'll show you at the end. A lozenge, vertical, quadrant, a lozenge, vertical. Okay, like that. Now, I would definitely use nib for all my manuscript. I don't use felt tip pen for sure. And I would say if you teach young children, because I think a lot of you may be teachers as well. I tried it recently. I did a whole manuscript class with a bunch of teenage students for a week. We learned 5 days, 6 hours in that whole week, 6 hours a day, right? And when we tried this with the felt tip, they wrote really well because it's easy to control and they definitely enjoy the calligraphy part. Now, what I try to do is it's still really wet, but the idea is once it's dry, you want to use the paper, a longer paper, and just cover it. And you can see that whether the space are vertical enough, like you can check it. Sorry, not vertical, but the spacing in between the letters, it's one pen width. Now, sometimes I can see inconsistency too. Then I will learn, try to improve it. So I will see that this white space is a little bit bigger. Yeah. Anyway, so that's more or less about the calligraphy side. Now, you can also try using cut quills. Very cool to write with. I try writing it with it as well. It's really fun. But I just use it for fun. You don't practice with it because I find this shaft is so thin to hold it. I feel very sore after a while, right? Because it's so narrow. So I don't feel comfortable if I write it for a long time. I think that's the calligraphy part. Now, just to wrap up, because I do still want to show you some of my behind the scene work. And also, I know that in the handout, we have the layout. Now, this is actually luckily all visually very easy to understand. So this is from the handout. Let me bring it up a little bit. This is the page 32, starting with all the handout. Sorry, the design layout. Now, if we look at the design layout, what I want to show you is basically you can always use reference of the medieval manuscript to give you an idea how to create the layout because you use it as a reference. Now, notice that, for example, this one, the left border, it's a bit wider than the right border. So this is wider and this narrower. This is narrower and this is wider. So I would draft it and use this border, and I don't use the religious nativity scene here. I will use it for my calligraphy, right? My textura or other script that I apply. So I take advantage of copying this layout. Now, sometimes you can see that you can actually change it into an arch layout. So instead of a boring grid, you can make it into an arch shape, arch, like a curve, right? An arch shape. So that to make it a bit more interesting. And then this time you notice the border, it's wider here, okay? And this is wider than the other side. So I noticed that it's not always four sides are equal completely because I guess it's just a little bit too rigid in a way. Now, I also want to mention I put a label here because I recently learned that it's a school in England called the King's Foundation, the School of Traditional Arts. You can just Google this. This school is based in London. It's incredible. They have so many traditional arts to learn. They have the Indian miniature, Parisian, all the kind of border design. If you want to learn how to paint uh, the Virgin Mary, the Renaissance style, they have a whole course which you can take. I think they do offer online and in-person classes. And because I live abroad in Hong Kong, and what I find amazing is I found a course in the summer where they have a 1 week, Monday to Friday, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So I can travel for 1 week and just study without, because a lot of the courses, some school offers every Tuesday, right? So as someone that don't live in Europe or abroad, it's impossible for me to go. But anyway, I was so excited. And they have a lot of, if you're interested to learn more realistic, not realistic, but painting like human or religious figures, because I do not paint those and I don't know how to. Now, the layout as well, I want to talk about here, the traditional layout. You can see I have given you different ways how you can use a more traditional methods to create the layout. You can have like divide it into two text box or three. So pretty, like descriptive here. You can break it down. The traditional also can use the arch design for it. Okay. Now you can apply, of course, the big versos or the big illuminated letters or initials. You can make it bigger. You can make it smaller. Um, there's so many ways. Now, these are my idea. This is not from the manuscript, but I come up with these ideas to show you that, when I was playing with my pencil and just drafting it, I was thinking, you can make it more modern. You can have the text just put out in the center horizontally and have large flower borders on top and bottom. You can make like a page, for example, if you, I know, make a smaller one behind, it's quite a nice way to emphasize some wordings. So, I mean, just an idea. Let's say if you love Shakespeare's, you can write the Shakespeare, copy one page of from Shakespeare, and you can have little ones, also Shakespeare's, but this is the page you want to emphasize, then this is all grid divided. It could be like, I don't know, even recipes, breaking into your favorite dog type, like or breed. Just something modern because after all, my course is trying to blend the traditional to modern elements. This can be a family tree, right? You can make into family tree style. This is like a book page, but what if we angled it? It just make it visually different, definitely a little bit more modern twist. You can make into a circle frame, how you can create these circles and write the letters in circular format can be visually quite interesting. So that's about the layout. And then lastly, because I said I want to show you some of these work, right? So this is a printout of the the piece I did as how do you say a gift for the royal family to the king and the queen of England. A gift from the family, not family, sorry, a royal, you can say friends, right? So he commissioned me and asked me to make this to be sent to the king and the queen. And I want to describe to you what I did here. So I want to make it, you know, I can do. Actually, for time-wise, just use this. I have image on screen, but I think I would just go with this. Now, when I first designed the border, you can see that there is a lot of things going on. The first thing I will always think about is my calligraphy writing because I need to know the width of it, right? So I'll always write it out on a piece of paper and then adjust all the line spacing. Now, I noticed that because the words that was given to me is not able to be fit into one sentence sometimes. Let's say astonishing and breathtaking cannot be fit in one line. And honestly, I don't really want to break the word, even though you can, but I think it's just more legible if it's one word without breaking them into separate lines. So I use the line fillers to do the alignment here. And sometimes I can fit two words, and sometimes three words like that. Now, this is the first thing I would design. Now, once I figure out how much space this will take, then I will decide the side border. And I did not want this to be all vines like this side because I want something to really represent the coronation part. So this was written with the word the coronation of King Charles III and Queen Camilla with a scroll. Okay, just a simple scroll, and I designed this like kind of a monogram of a C and a C, right? Because Charles and Camilla has two capital C. It's very subtle here. Now, the rest, once I have this, on the side, come up with this idea, and then the remaining is basically just quite easy. You can fill up with large flowers first, right? So this is the large flower, and then the rest, where we do all the vines of the black and the gold, and then the large flowers. So I would design the large flowers where I place them, and then I will fill up with the smaller ones. And now and then I will think about the colors as well, just bring in a few pop colors, red and blue here, a bit of uh, the yellow here, because I don't want this to be just small little flowers. Now, obviously, because that was my first piece, I honestly wasn't very experienced and it was pretty much self-taught. I feel like this subject is really very much me learning from looking at the books. And I have this piece that I did for last year. Now, this is very small version of the original piece. This is almost 1/6 of the original. So it's massive, the original. And this is a printout. So when I designed this one, which I'm trying to zoom out as much as possible, but anyway, maybe I angled it. Sorry, I just angled it to describe this. Now, when I have this piece, first is the letters. I will write everything. And then what I did is I will use computer and I will use computer to Photoshop to adjust a little bit. So for example, maybe some words gets a bit longer. So I use Photoshop and push it to make it narrower because when I write, I can still kind of like change the spacing a little bit with my nib. People can't really see it, in a way. They're not gonna get so close and kind of measure it. But I use Photoshop to help me to make lines a little bit more cleaner here because this is more advanced level for me at that stage, after a year of drawing a manuscript. Then what also I did, as you notice, I use line fillers, right? I use these illuminated letters to highlight the first word, a letter of a paragraph. So I did not give space. I just used this to emphasize the new paragraph, basically. And once this is designed, then I will, have the border space, right? Because the text always determines how much space it would take. Now, once you have the border space, I again want to have a narrower top and a wider bottom. Like you see, this is longer, right? More space because visually it just look less boring because I'll do it on the side where you have to turn your head, but you can see this is wider and this is narrow because I really don't want this to be the same because it just look a little bit standard, like same, right? Now these two are more or less the same width because that's the limited paper space I can have because the text is quite a lot, to be honest. Now, and then inside, when you see all these, you have learned how to paint this in one of the lessons. You have learned how to paint this and this as well. So what I did is, again, I fill it up with the larger flower on my draft, a bigger flower, because bigger flower means I can put more colors to my piece. right? I always determine the larger flower, and I want this to be very colorful, because this is blown up. When I make the original, it's very big. It sits in, I think about the occasion, it's gonna be in the dining room for 400 people to see from the back. It has to be some sort of colors that pops. So I determine the color of the big flower, and then the rest I use all the vines, fill up the space. And if I zoom in to show you, and of course, I added my personal bespoke elements for the recipient. So her name is Aloko, and the middle name is an owl. So I added an owl, a medieval style owl. I added some books here because she published some calligraphy books. And then her little puppy here, very cute, and it matches the owl with that kind of like a bit cartoonish eyes. And yeah, so that's kind of bespoke element. And this is the year that was the date and the month of the calligraphy conference that it was given to the president of IMPAF. Now, what else I want to talk about? I think, oh yes, one little thing. Zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. Do you see it's a bit blurry, but these exist. These are this little thing. They help me to fill up any white spaces, these little alien dots, right? So I make use of them, and I make use of this little line, this wave, to fill up some space as well. Because sometimes you might have a lot of white space and you want to fill it up and you don't know how to, then you can go back to using these. Yeah. If you know the name, let me know, but I just call them little aliens. Okay, so that's two pieces, and hopefully that gives you an idea of the layout. So I've done the INPAF certification. They have a border, it's called Illumination and Borders. So these work are quite big, and unfortunately, I will see if I can. Sorry, I definitely didn't. Oh, that's
Oh my goodness. I wish this class was in person right now. Holy cow.
I
Wow.
know. I love in person because you can actually hold this piece and see it.
Oh my
I
goodness.
I have a better idea because I prepare. Hold on, give me a moment. I need to find these. Okay, why don't I change to? So there are people here. I'm gonna change to quickly. Wait 1 second, because instead of showing you, because it's so big, all the pieces. Now, if you're ever thinking about doing in the long term, like doing proficiency or excellence, so I want to show you some of these work. Let me just open it all. Oh, hold on, maybe. You can see that, I used a magnifier basically for the proficiency level. If anyone is interested, I don't know the rules for this year because I did that in 2024. And so 2 years ago, they gave me all all the people who wants to take part of this certification. You will see the image to copy. Basically, they give you something to copy. So the final piece I did is like this, right? This is a scan version. That was a close-up of the large initial letters. Okay. So the idea is to copy as exactly the same as the original reference they give you, the color, the techniques and everything. So it's not creativity, it's kind of showcasing your skills. So that was the first piece. And I also did this piece. Sorry, they're all little photos. Maybe I can do fools. Yeah. So this is when I pencil drafted, then I have close-up details of the acanthus leaf. This is more elaborate details of the acanthus. But again, I did not create this layout. I was given an image and try to copy it. But the challenge for this piece is they give you a black and white version. And I have to do my own color version. So really studying the mid-tone, the darker tone. So if you see the close-up, but this is nothing more different from what I've been teaching you for the canvas painting. I used the light wash of the beige and I added teasing the darker color, the same. But I spent so much time on each a canvas leaf. I would say at least 6 hours for just this little part. I really is spend so much time so that I can perfect that gradation. You can see here, right, very smooth line, smooth watercolor because I spend time on, perfecting it. And this one, I remember doing that probably 8 hours, just keep going back, and I don't like this, and keep going back and forth. It sounds ridiculous, but it is time consuming, and I'm glad I passed that year and I designed this. I think the judges wasn't very happy with this design because it wasn't very matching the overall style. But this is the part where you can design the interior of this initial. So the rest was given as an image to copy. Yeah. So the final artwork was like this. And I received a comment that the gold was not solid enough, which is very true. It wasn't painted solid enough. So that's why when I said when you paint gold, do more than just one layer because you can hold the paper up in the light and you can see it's not completely solid or opaque enough. Now that is for the proficiency. Pretty happy I passed. It's just because to redo everything is gonna takes a lot of time. This is the piece I talk about I did for last year, and also very fortunate I passed. And this is the details you can see. I actually have done a couple versions, and I really did not like because I try to do a very traditional like style, but I know that my own personal taste is not super traditional. I always like more colorful. I don't know. I'm just enjoy brighter colors. I don't know, just more modern twist to my artwork. I hope that's how it shows to other people. So I finally settled down with this design and I draw it. And I have flowers. This is in London. I was actually in London at that time doing this certification, and I love this flower. I was like, oh my God, so unique. It's like sakura, but with this lovely cute red dot. So I applied it onto my manuscript. I mean, I know it doesn't look like the flower. It's just stylized version of it. And then now you can see this when it's finished with the gilding, and this is said signature. And that's when I sent it to my husband, who's like, are you sure this is signature? And then I erased it. It's become president. I mean, the line, I think it's a little bit thicker because after all, I scraped the paper off and, it cannot be as crisp, but at least you can see that it can be changed completely. So if you want to turn on your camera as well, um, I hope that it was insightful. And I even have these, like, I want to show you what I mean when I did a traditional piece. So this is the traditional piece that I did, and I kept it. I did it, and then I'm stopped. You see, because I'm like, I don't like it. I spent so many hours. Probably this is, I don't know, at least 4 or 5 days of work. And the reason I don't like it is too traditional. I stopped it and I kept it because I thought if I fail, maybe I'll use it this year. Anyway, but it's so much gilding. You see the gold, right? And I have these, I was gonna show you. They are again very big pieces, but you may be interested to see is the process. So usually what I do is I use tracing paper, and the way I do is like I will draft. So I will draft the idea, right? And then I'll put another tracing paper on top, and I will trace what I like and add what I want to add or erase. So I keep using layer and layer. I have many layers until I am finally happy with the design, right? So I use the final design. And the end, I will trace it with a micron. So I have a solid line. So finally, it's very clean. Now I will print it out. I will use Photoshop again, help me with. So I write everything and I will just edit everything on Photoshop so that it's faster, basically. And I will print it out on a large piece of paper because the certification is like this is 11. by 12. I can't remember. Yeah, it's a bit bigger. So I print it out and I will use a light box and I will trace. I will do this. So this is a piece. All right, I'll bring it closer with pencil line because I have the printed version, a new paper put on top, and a light box underneath, and I will trace with a pencil. And then I start the process of painting, doing the calligraphy. And sometimes, like I would use, especially for the big certification that I did for, sorry, the IMPAF president one. I have, hold on. I really wish it's in person, right? Now, this is the piece. So you see, this is the text that I'll write on, and I would have printed on a paper and I trace on top with the light box because I don't want to misspell. If I redraw it, I have to spend hours and hours again. Yeah. So that's a lot of process, and you can see that, like I have big piles of going back and forth. And now if you want to see this. Oh, there's a mess here. Now I have all these as well. So when I did my certification, I would test out different paper, seeing how it works when it's gilding, right? And the watercolor, like sometimes it shows up more vibrant on certain paper. So I would do some testing and make sure I write down the name of the watercolor paper. You can't see the writing here, but I have labeled it the Fabriano, the Arches, so that I can pick the paper that I like most to use. And I do that a lot. I will test out the calligraphy, whether it give me hairlines when I do calligraphy on, because it's important for for especially for the calligraphy certification for IMPATH. Yeah, so this is what I will do a lot of behind the scene before the final piece. Yeah. But if you ever try, I'm happy to, help you or give you advice. Yeah, because I learned so much from the process. Okay.
Just absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you. Because I want to say I don't feel that my work is amazing. There's so much room for improvement, but I think that's for me it's good to have a bit of this feeling because you will always want to get better, but
Uh-huh.
also sometimes I need to stop myself from thinking of that because I don't want to lose confidence in myself, so it's honest truth. Yeah, but when I found the King's Foundation, I'm like, okay, they have an MA program, by the way. I'll post on the Facebook group chat, the group. I found yesterday this video of a lady called Lucy Morrison, I think. She's based in the UK, and she taught a short course at the School of Foundation. And anyway, I post her video on the forum, on our group chat. And she actually, I found out she taught there, right? And she actually studied the master, the MA, the master degree. I think it's a 2-year program. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited. Someone actually, I love her work, and the way she paint is very, very, very detailed. And yeah, it's something I want to keep improving. Anyway, I found her work and I get very excited because I signed up for her online class as well. She's was doing a William Morris painting class. I put it on the post because I think, we just keep learning from each other, right? And the way she learned is like actually she learned from teachers as well. Because this whole course, a lot of things are self-discovery, and obviously there might be a lot more new information you can learn from others. Okay. I have a private lesson coming in 10 minutes, so and I thank you for staying with me.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been such a great
Thank
4
you. Yeah,
lessons.
thank you. I'll be looking out for when you teach again. Anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
signing up.
Well, I definitely would teach Spencerian and Engrosser script because these two script I've taught it for over 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So I'm very experienced in those, and I like to break things down step by step. That's the style I teach. But yeah, thank you for your support, and I
All
sure
right.
will announce if I have new classes. Yeah.
All right. Can't
Okay.
wait to see what everybody does
Thank
in
you
the
so
Facebook.
much.
All right,
Yeah, and
bye.
Absolutely.
please
Thank
post
you.
your work on Facebook
Thank
page.
you.
All
Thank you,
right, bye.
Anna. Thank
Okay.
you, Madeline.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye bye, everyone. Bye bye.